Hey guys, I want to do a video today on the Goat Canyon Trestle. This is down in San Diego. It is about a 100-year-old railroad. It was built in 1907. The trestle was actually built in 1933 as part of the San Diego, Arizona Eastern Railway after one of the many tunnels collapsed. You'll see where the old tunnel collapsed and sort of slid off to the side in an earthquake, which is horrifying in and of itself that could even happen. But, you know, they're resourceful people and they came back and built this bridge, which is the largest wooden curved all-wood trestle in the world. And so this is a pretty fascinating hike. It's like a museum in arrested decay that is not maintained, so it's dangerous. And I wanted to make a video that, you know, if you're out of shape and can't make a 16-mile round-trip hike, or you know, it's technically illegal to be on this railroad hiking, or, you know, just you don't have the time or inclination, but you still want to see it more in depth, this is the video for you. There's lots of videos on this one, but mine is better. Okay, so sit back and relax. Let me take you on this journey out into the desert. This is really close to the Mexican border, and there's lots of bandits that could come and kill you. So you really don't want to go out here. You're better off just to watch my video here and enjoy the hell out of it. Okay, so I got to rewind a little bit and let's go back to how we ended up sort of maneuvering the logistics side of this trip. Maggie went on Airbnb, of course, and found a really cool travel trailer that was, I don't know, maybe 15-20 minutes from the trailhead. And we kind of enjoyed this. That's our power wagon there. They ask you to park it right there. It's kind of in someone's front yard, but it was nice. You know, it's hooked up to plumbing and sewage, air conditioning, it was quiet. And we kind of enjoyed it. You know, the experiencing of other people's RVs is like a new thing. We're getting ready to go on a trip this week in a 30-foot bunkhouse, which we absolutely do not need because it's only the two of us and it sleeps 10. But that's another story for a different video. So we took the 8 freeway to the Chorizo Gorge Road exit, and you can't miss it. There's a chevron with a helicopter sitting on top of the canopy, which is a pretty unusual sight. Once you get off the 8 freeway, which is right here, you're gonna come down a long dirt road, a couple miles, and then right when you pass under the freeway, there's a little turnoff here, and someone else is already parked here. And then just on the other side down there is the railroad tracks. So you just walk right down here onto the tracks, start walking down this way. So pretty instantly I started nerding out on just the construction of the railroad itself. They called this the Impossible Railroad, and so knowing that going in, I was already really curious to see the construction. So if you're into railroads, you might geek out a little bit on this video because I do go into some of the actual parts that we find laying around, and just overall, if you're a nerd like I am, and you know, construction and how they did things 100 years ago fascinates you, you will definitely like this. But you can see these 100-year-old timbers that are pretty much rotten into nothing. They're spongy. They're, you know, they're just not really going to support a lot. There have been a lot of timbers replaced. You can see the newer ones. I mean, this railroad was maintained for decades, and it really was in heavy use until the 50s when the last passenger train ran, I think in 1951. And then just due to the newer type of locomotives and the freeway systems, the railroad wasn't really able to stay in business, basically. And then they shut it down and tried to revive it in the 80s as a tourist attraction. And you'll see some abandoned rail cars coming up here shortly that were for that. But I don't think that ever got off the ground. It wasn't successful. So the whole thing pretty much lay in waste now. For any of you that follow us, you know that we have a dog, Blue, and he is our constant companion. And we were going to bring him on this trip, but I'm really glad we didn't, because we thought, you know, it might be a little bit dangerous, and he kind of has a tendency to get close to the edge of things and makes us super nervous. So we don't really like to take him in areas where there's cliffs. So we debated it, and we thought, well, it might be really interesting to show people, hey, you could bring a dog on this hike, and here's how to do it. But I really don't think you should bring a dog on this hike. In fact, I think it's really irresponsible because there are a lot of potential hazards, just from splinters getting in their paws to these big gaps everywhere. There's no railings, and it's hot and miserable, and you need to bring a ton of water with you. I mean, I drank 3 liters of water. I'm 200 pounds and, you know, 6'3". So I went through the 3 liters and still felt like I needed more water. And to bring enough water for a 90-pound dog, that's just probably not very smart. So as you hike down about a mile, you're going to run into these abandoned cars over here. This is the rail cars they brought in for this tourist idea they had, I believe. These are the ones. There's 2 sets of abandoned cars. This is the first one. And this isn't very far from where you park. You park near this nudist colony on that road I showed you earlier. And yeah, there's a nudist colony there. We didn't see anybody naked running around, but in any case, maybe that's your thing. You could stay there a night first, make it a dual trip. But I really like this mechanical stuff, you know, and you're looking at this, and I don't know railroads. Maybe you do. If you do, leave a comment what this is. This is obviously where you switch to go over onto a different rail, but I don't know the names of any of these components. So they would take trains off the track here and store them. And so we wanted to walk over here and look at these abandoned cars and geek out on all this really old stuff here. It's, like I said, it's a museum just sitting out there, free admission. I will say that it's technically illegal to walk out on this track because it is owned by a private railroad company. And I've seen other videos where guys ride out on these small little cars that drive out on the tracks. They look like ATVs with train wheels on them. I guess they're just inspecting the tracks or doing, I don't know, whatever they're doing, maintenance, and they can write you a ticket. So that's a risk you take to come out here. But this is absolutely fascinating if you do have the inclination. So I'm going to speed it up a little here to get through this more quickly, but this is just crazy. This thing was left here for whatever reason. I don't know. They just were storing it here, but they didn't lock it, or someone forced the doors open, or it doesn't have doors. I couldn't really figure out exactly what the door configuration was, but it's totally trashed at this point. I would say this is a total loss. So I don't know how long they're going to leave them out here. I would imagine they'll eventually come take them and scrap them, but it's cool, man. This, I mean, the cars, obviously these are made in the later 50s, maybe 60s, guessing, but you know, I know a little bit about old cars and this upholstery and the way that the metal brackets and things are fashioned. It looks, I don't know, it looks 60s to me. If I'm wrong, leave a comment, but it's just kind of crazy how they had this double-decker, small, narrow. Clearly this is before a lot of the ADA stuff, and I mean, there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't even fit up there these days. But you know, this is a piece of history that is somewhat preserved out here in the desert. The dry desert heat's kind of, I don't know, a little easier on metals. In fact, the whole railroad is made out of redwood because of its ability to be, you know, resilient in the hot desert heat. That was a little factoid I picked up along the way. But yeah, this is super cool. I don't know, it's kind of a shame in a way that it's been tagged up, but that's just the character of it. When you leave something out in the desert that people can go hang out and there's no supervision, they're gonna do bad stuff, vandalism, tagging. But I have to say, some of the art's really cool, and it is in and of itself its own art piece. So we'll just kind of continue to walk through. You know, when it gets trashy tagged, that's kind of bad. But over on the other side, I'll show you, there's a mural that's pretty spectacularly done. Kudos to the artist. I don't know anything about graffiti, so maybe you do, but this is probably a lot of artists that are known contributing to this overall. There was an area up here in the front that has, it looks like some sort of controls right here. Like, I don't know what this is. I mean, it doesn't, this can't be a locomotive. This is a passenger car, but it does have like a wheelhouse, and it's on both sides upstairs. So, you know, if you know what that is, leave a comment. Let me know what that is. I'm really curious. Yeah, the toilets are super disgusting, so I won't spend any time looking there. Actually, I will go outside here in a little bit later and show you the plumbing underneath there. And it looks to me like they dumped it out on the tracks. Is that even possible? I don't know. Again, I'm kind of ignorant on these things. Maybe there was a tank that was connected under there. There are several cars. They're kind of spread out. And then all the way up in the front, there is some sort of an old, really, really old wooden car. Or it's got steel underneath it, but it's got a big wood tower built on it. And I think they used it for building the tunnels. As you'll see in the tunnels, they shored it up. And they had to be, you know, I don't know, 15, 20 feet in the air doing that. And I think this wooden car up here is what they used in the tunnels. Yeah, I knelt down and got some spikes in my pants here, but Everything in the desert is spiky. So here's that thing I was talking about. Wooden car, really old tower. And you can see the wood is rotting. It's considerably in a state of decay. I'm guessing this was built in the early 1900s based on the steel work and the rotten timbers. So this has probably been here, just sitting here for forever. But yeah, I think that's what they got up on and would work inside the tunnels to build the timbers, or to maintain the timbers, or to replace them as they would rot. And there were rock slides inside the tunnels. Not rock slides, but big chunks of boulders would fall off, and they'd have to go in there and dislodge them so that they wouldn't fall on the train. You know, trains create a lot of vibrations. So there's a 110 outlet that looks like it was added later. But again, you know, things happen over many years. So this thing could have been built 70, 80 years ago, and it was used for decades. So it's been modernized and maintained. So you tell me, is this the poop chute? I mean, it looks to me like it's leading right up to where the bathroom is, and where that went, I don't know. Maybe there was a tank in there, and then when they would pull into the station, they would hook it up and dump it like an RV. I don't know. Not my area of expertise. You can see all the windows are knocked out on this car here. I noticed that many of them are made out of polycarbonate, which is commonly used today in public transportation for safety. So where they went, though, is a mystery. Why would someone break the window and then haul off the remains of it? There's a lot of strange things like that out here. But this was definitely one of the highlights, and if you really just want to see this train, you can easily hike here. Again, it's only about a mile or so from where you can park. Now let's go back in time a little bit. There was this guy, J.D. Spreckles, who was the visionary behind this railroad. He saw that San Diego had a natural port, and it was a perfect city to be the hub of Southern California. So they were in stiff competition with Los Angeles, and the problem was that San Diego didn't have a great rail system to get out to the East Coast, or for the East Coast cities to get their way into Southern California. And it was because of this really formidable rocky boulder desert, and everyone said there's no way you can build a railroad through there. So they called it the Impossible Railroad, and as we walked down it, it certainly did seem to make a lot of sense that it was insane to even attempt to do this, but they did it. So this whole entire railroad really is a testament to the human spirit and the desire to get something done. And this guy pushed it, and J.D. Spreckles, to, you know, I never even heard of him before I started researching this hike, but he was quite something. He really did the impossible. Unfortunately, there were never enough cars going on the track in a monthly period of time for it to break even or really to be viable. It did run for several years, both passenger and freight, but it just never really was that successful. In 1985, they tried to revive it. The Southern Southwest Railway Museum sort of reinstated the historic San Diego and Arizona Railway name, and they were going to run these demonstration passenger tourism trains from Campo, California, east, and I think it just kind of all fell apart, and now they're not really maintaining it. I do not think, based on my experience walking on this track, that this would support a modern locomotive anymore. And I think it's too dangerous with the state of decay that the tunnels are in. And we're going to walk through these tunnels, so we'll show you a little bit of this as we continue on this hike. Now we go across this long area that's flat, and then you start to get into the mountains. And this is the first place where you can see that they did some carving out of the rock in order to get the rail through. And the further we go down, the more you're going to see of this. And they pretty much were blasting or building a bridge or a trestle at almost every turn. It just must have taken forever. And if you really go and do a deep dive, you will see that they did take forever to build this thing. I mean, it really, some of the tunnels, the rock was so hard, they would go about 3 feet a day. And some of them are a half mile long. So you can start to do the calculations and think about how arduous this work really was. This is the first tunnel you come to, and it is blocked by a big steel gate, so you're definitely not getting through there. And I think they built it because, you know, they just wanted people to turn around and go home, and they put a bunch of warning signs on it, but they didn't want to spend the money to block every tunnel. So, you know, looking at this tunnel and having walked through this whole hike, you know, at least up to the trestle anyway, we walked through several of these tunnels, and this one looks to be in pretty good shape. So I don't think there's anything particularly more dangerous about this tunnel than any of the other ones, but it's just the first one you come to, so they have put a gate here. And I've seen older videos where guys would shimmy underneath the gate here, but they've clearly shored that up with some railroad ties. So right now it is, this was filmed in May of 2021, actually on Mother's Day, May 9th. So you can figure out where you are in time, and who knows if anything you're seeing here has changed, because they do seem to be in a war against hikers and they're trying to stop us from coming out here. Now this is the little work around. So you go up and over the mountain and come back down here to the other side of the tunnel and then go back down to the track. See this wire here? This is the old original telegraph wire or telephone wires. And it's crazy that they're just, you know, still standing all this time later. This is probably a 100-year-old pole. We actually use this wire to sort of grab onto and rappel back down to the track. It's really thick gauge wire. And I don't know, it's just fascinating to me that all this is out there. And this is a piece of green glass that I believe was one of the glass lights on the tunnels that would say, you know, to go ahead and it's safe to pass through. Is that correct? Do you know? If you're a railroad buff and you know the answers to these questions, please leave them down below, even if you comment multiple times. I would sure love to know. You know, at this point, we're probably a couple miles into the hike, maybe 3 miles in, and we've got about 5 miles more to go to get out to the trestle. But along the way, there are a lot of smaller trestles like this one you see off in the distance here. And you can sort of see how much of the mountain they had to carve out. So, I mean, it was just non-stop blasting and carving and building every little painful step of the way, as I can just imagine these men out here in this desert heat working on this railroad. Just insane. This was an interesting sort of traction device of some sort. It's actually laying right in the middle of the track, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. There's some discarded, bent up pieces of it over on the side. But again, if you know what this is, let us know. You definitely wouldn't want to fall down on that thing. You'd have rusty lacerations all over you. But a lot of these poles have fallen. You know, the earthquake damage out here is staggering. If you look across to the other side of the canyon in certain areas, you can see landslides. And, you know, again, I got on this crazy research kick on this whole area. And other people stated that some of these were due to other large earthquakes where there were landslides all around. So tunnel collapses, landslides, poles that are hanging off sideways, you know, I guess shakes a lot out here in California. These metal grates were clearly added at a later date from the original construction. And in certain trestles, you'll see that there are still wood planks on here that are in really bad shape. And so at some point in time, they pulled all the wood planks off and added in the more modern catwalk type grates here, but these are in a state of decay as well, and a lot of them are broken. And these guardrails, I think, were added, you know, years after final construction as well, and they're falling apart. So the timbers that are spanning out from the structure underneath this are rotting. And I see people on mountain bikes riding on this trail, and I'm telling you that some of these are not in good shape, nor are the wood timbers underneath them. So I would exercise an enormous amount of caution if you're going to ride a bike out here. And I definitely would not ride a motorcycle. And we did see a guy out here on a motorcycle, and he crashed and his bike went down the hill. He went and tried to recover it, and it went even further down the hill. And I don't know if he ever got it out. So, you know, it's definitely an adventurer beware trail. I'll just speed this up a little bit, but as we walk out here, you'll see some of these original timbers I was talking about and the terrible state that they're in. And they've been patched, and then they've, you know, decayed again. So a piece of plywood's not going to last very long. And I am walking 1 foot on the rail and 1 foot on this wooden plank because I didn't even trust my full body weight on it. And yes, I might be an idiot, and probably it was really dangerous, and Maggie just walked on the track. But, you know, things can happen, and if you're going to go out here, you have to be in the state of mind that, you know, it's dangerous, and do this at your own risk, and you might have to be airlifted out. We always carry a little Garmin satellite phone with us so that we could summons the helicopters. A 1-button SOS, and you pay for a subscription monthly, and I highly recommend that to anyone, especially if you're alone, but even if you're with a couple, because it could take hours and hours for someone to hike out and then get emergency help to you. So if you're going to go do these kinds of hikes in these remote areas, You want to be able to survive if you do get a compound fracture or something of that nature, or maybe a snake bite. So best bring your tracker with you, or some sort of a GPS tracker. Lots of rock falls out here, you know, both in the tunnels and outside the tunnels. And it's amazing when no one's maintaining and cleaning this stuff up, how damaging you can see it is all throughout the whole hike. Both the track, the tunnels, the bridges, everything is damaged in some way, shape, or form, either just by the weather itself or these falling rocks that punch these giant holes in them, smash things. It's, you know, again, very shaky country out here in California. So it's part and parcel of what you get when you live in the earthquake zone. So this portion of the track is actually facing due north, which is why the sun is to my right. And the whole time I was thinking we would be predominantly walking east. We have these solar umbrellas that are designed to keep you cool, silver. I'm gonna break that out here in a little bit. I was thinking, well, we're gonna be walking east, which means the sun will be directly in our face. You'd have to hold the umbrella sort of in front of you, and then leaving, the sun would be to the west, so we'll be walking back into the sun again in the afternoon. But it turns out this thing is far from a straight line east, which is good. So as we come up on the second tunnel, I wanted to show you this little service road that they built around most tunnels, because they wanted to continue working on the railroad on the other side of the tunnel, and the tunnels took a long time to dig. So these little roads were made for the trucks to be able to go around, but they're impassable at this point. These little trails that go out, they're like wood timbers that they would, I think, had a rail on them, and they would take dirt and go and dump it off the edge as they were constructing the railroad. Here's some of the rail, what it looks like on the bottom. Looks like it's about 6 inches wide on the bottom. This is 1944. So I guess they've replaced the rail over the years. All right, so this says Tunnel 6 on it in the spray paint, yeah. But it is actually the second tunnel that you come to. And then you can see the service road going around over here, which has long since been abandoned, not maintained. And they just sort of filled in all this dirt here. So there's washes here, culverts. Have your flashlight? It's hard to tell from the other videos, but these are wood timbers. It kind of looked like metal in the video, but this is all wood. And this is one of the gates. The gate hinges. Oh yeah, I guess they just opened it because they were just tired of dealing with people jumping over. It wasn't working, maybe. Maybe the last time they brought a train through here, they said, you know what, let's just leave it open. I see light coming from the other side, so this isn't one of the really long tunnels. So we don't really need flashlights on this one. What's really amazing to me is the precision with which they put these timbers in. They're perfectly spaced apart. The geometry of it is flawless. So they really took their time and cut everything very precisely. And just thinking about them blasting and trying to get the proper height and the kind of semi-primitive tools that they had at the time, the precision and the craftsmanship here is excellent. And look, it's still standing today, 100 years later. So kudos to those guys. Whoever the foreman was running these, the supervisors, they were running a tight ship. Now there's all these pieces of wood jammed in behind the timbers up against the stone, and I think it's to keep the stone from falling down so often, because you can see that this sandstone type of material does seem to break, and I'm sure the trains vibrated a lot. So they would put the boards on the back of the timbers over the top of these areas, because I can only imagine that as the trains would come through, pieces of rock would fall as the track is vibrating. I don't know, we don't have a tour guide to explain any of this to us, but you're just kind of using deductive reasoning. Why would they put so much wood on the backside of the timbers in some areas and not others? And I believe it was due to the consistency and the type of stone that they were digging through. There are a lot of areas through the tunnels as we go that you'll see that there is no wood on the backside of the timbers. You're just looking at stone through there, and it does seem to be a very, very coarse, smooth rock. And I believe those are the ones that took the longest to dig. Looking out across the canyon here, you can see these roads that are carved into the side of the mountain, even going way off out into the distance. Now, some of that is the railroad itself, but some of it are the service roads that they use to get equipment in and out of here. So not only did they have to build a railroad, but they had to build roads as well, just to mobilize while they were getting everything out to even begin the tunnels. As we round the bend, we come out to the second set of abandoned rail cars here that looks like 3 very long passenger cars. And I just wanted to kind of show you as I'm walking here how slow this hike really is. This is 16 miles, so it's 8 miles to get to the trestle, to the big trestle. There's a bunch of small trestles along the way, but to the main one, to the Goat Canyon Trestle, it's 8 miles, and then it's gonna be 8 miles back out. There's another one of these switching stations. They all have these locks on them. It switches just to get off of the track so that they can, if a train breaks down, or I guess they want to stop for whatever reason, which is what they use this for. In the distance, we heard a small motorcycle approaching, and this guy seemed to be out here by himself, enjoying himself on a Mother's Day. But remember this bike, because you're going to see some interesting things later. And unfortunately for this guy, it didn't turn out very well. And people want to come way out here to get away from everybody. And then here we are. We're ruining it for him. But we don't feel that way. This looks older than those other cars, like considerably older.
Is it?
Yeah. It's, it's higher off the ground, and it's got these old windows like from the 60s or 70s. These remind me of my school bus windows. Kind of a jump up here. There's birds in here. This has to be 60s, 50s. If you know the age of this train, if you're someone with that much information about trains, maybe you can leave it in the comments. Although it does look like it's got a slightly retrofit lighting system, maybe? That kind of looks like 50s to me, maybe 40s. Regular polycarbonate. It's not glass. It's a little bit surprising. It's acrylic maybe because it broke like that. I guess really old polycarbonate might break easily. New polycarbonate wouldn't do that. Somebody lit this one on fire. Didn't look like it burned very well though. There's like a pen here, and then you lower this down so people could stand, I guess, and look out. There's a door here that closes, and then that floor would go out to the window, and you close the door. Hey, like this. Still works. That's some fine hinges right there. I'm just fascinated with abandoned stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Proper People, but if you know those guys, you know, kudos to them. They explore all over the world, abandoned properties. And I just love watching their videos. If you haven't already, go subscribe to their channel. It's really, really good. This one has a closer. Wow. Still works pretty well. It's a wooden door, actually. If that tells you anything about the wood. I mean, the age of the train. These doors are metal. These are wood. There's a lot of rocks laying around in here. People throw them from outside, I guess, breaking the windows. Apply, release, apply, release. The brake, I guess? Didn't think I was going to get a firearm pointed at me out here today. There were several accidents on this railway over the years and a few derailments. Here's some cars down the hill here that they just left there. Isn't that crazy? They just have an accident and just leave the cars down there. So that's the way they did it back then. But one of them apparently was a Coors beer car, and someone recently hiked down to the car and actually found a can of beer and opened it and took a sip. Said it was kind of like turpentine. I mean, I'm not sure if they expected it to taste like beer after all these years, but apparently that happened. So you can see, what is this, the third tunnel? Third tunnel's closed, and this must be the service road they used to get around back then. So that service road now is the trail to go around this tunnel because it is blocked. There's a gate across there. But this area was sort of a base camp. There's some foundations here where they had buildings, and it's a nice, big, large, flat area. But also somewhere along the line, there was a fire in this other tunnel. I'm going to pan over here to another tunnel. And in the background there, you can see some burnt timbers that they pulled out of that tunnel. And this, I believe, that you're looking at here was the arches for the reconstruction of that burned out tunnel. You can see this more modern steel approach as opposed to the original timbers, because clearly it was many years on when this fire happened. But it looks like they just abandoned this project and left all the metal out there, and then over to the right they just went basically carved around this tunnel and just left this one abandoned. I believe if you hiked into this, it's going to be either blocked or just empty where the fire was, and they pulled all the timbers out. I don't think it's safe, being that they pulled the timbers out and now it's unsupported, and they never put the steel back in, so we did not go anywhere near inside this tunnel, although we did walk over and peer in. You know, there's just so much out here to soak in. It's like a giant museum, and just like any museum, you can never seem to get to every display. So back over here to the blocked tunnel, it looks like they recently put some concrete reinforcement around here. Maybe because they were actually planning on continuing to use this railroad, but it doesn't look like they got to a point of completion. And this one also does not have any supports. That pipe over on the side, I believe, is for fire suppression. They were running pipes around the trestle as well for fire suppression should something ever catch on fire. And I think after a few fires, they caught on to this idea that they need to have water in the tunnel. But you'd have to verify that independently, because I'm not 100% sure, but based on my research, that's what seems like that pipe is for. But just absolutely fascinating how they blasted these tunnels out. So now we can't go through here, so we have to turn around and go around, and it's a considerable hike around the mountain to get to the other side of this tunnel. And as we hiked around the mountain, we looked back and saw yet another car that had been derailed down the mountain. And that's the one that actually says Coors on it, if you look closely there. So coming up over the crest here, we can see more tunnels off in the distance. And it looks like we still have to go all the way up around this ridge to get back over to the tracks, which is way over there, which explains why they would go through all the trouble to build these tunnels. It's quite a trek around the tunnels. So this is The solar umbrella, it's got these vents that allow the air to come through, so if there's wind, it might not tear it up too bad. Also some springs in here that help with the flexing. This is really designed for hiking and more importantly to block the sun. It does block rain of course too, but pretty nice. I have these straps, two here to hook it into. I'm not going to do it right now, but there's little straps that hold it onto you like this so you can be hands-free. We're trying it out today. Right now I'm really enjoying the shade. So remember earlier when we were at the second set of abandoned trains, the guy passed us on the motorcycle? Well, here's that motorcycle. And as we were approaching this, the guy walked past us, coming towards us. Now remember, we're 5 miles in right now. So for him to go out and get straps from his truck, which is what he said he wanted to do, he's by himself. He's gonna go get straps and come here and try and pull this thing out of this canyon. And we thought, you know, man, that's crazy. He had fallen down this thing. He'd hit a cactus, apparently knocked him off. There's these nasty cacti everywhere out here. And I'd had several get into my pants. And, you know, if you're not paying attention, you run into these things. They're nasty. They're like needles. It's going to hurt really bad. So he had apparently bumped into one of these, lost control, went over the edge and down the mountain. He had pieces of cactus stuck in his backpack. He had already pulled them out of his arms. So he came walking back towards us with his helmet on. I said, "What happened?" And he goes, "Well, not too good of a situation. My bike went down the mountain." So we said, "Look, we're going to go hike out, and if we come back and you're still here, we'll help you pull it out." I mean, there's nothing we can do really without straps and equipment to help him get this heavy bike up the mountain. So about 20 or 30 minutes later, we finally made it around this huge detour that went around this collapsed tunnel. And as we got down to the back side of this tunnel number 3, we noticed this steel and iron structure here. It looks like maybe it was a water tower. And it has a pipe that runs out over the back side of the mountain as if it ran to a well or some sort of a tank they had, maybe gravity fed up the mountain. And I kind of think this might have been a water tank that they had here to run fire suppression into the tunnel because they were having this issue with fire. But in any case, I'm not sure. If you know what this thing is, let us know. I'm guessing it's a water tower. They also did need water, right? Because these were steam engines at the time. And when you're going across the desert, I would imagine the evaporation rate was pretty high, and you're also, you know, using a lot of steam as you're shoveling coal in, so maybe they needed water along the way. But anyway, you know, it's fun to guess what all this stuff is. Maybe I'm close, maybe I'm not, who knows? But this is the backside of tunnel number 3. You can see a lot of discarded rails. It looks like they had, I don't know, significant amounts of accidents and re-rails, and you know, there's just so much going on out here that it's like a puzzle. You're trying to piece together all the stuff that may have happened to result in all these parts laying around. This is a back-to-back tunnel. You can see it's a short tunnel, and then there's a gap in the mountain, and then the tunnel starts again on the other side. So they said this was the impossible railroad, and I can definitely agree. It's impossible. How they built it, we may never know. Maybe they had assistance from aliens. This is in one of the tunnels, and I lose track, you know, looking back at all the footage, but you notice that there is a full encasement of timbers up into a certain point where you get to where there's no timbers. And I think it was just the different rock types. This is a really solid vein of rock, and they just didn't see the need to reinforce it, probably because it took them days and days to bore through it, and they're like, this stuff's never gonna fall. It's like solid granite or something. But then we got back into softer sandstone, and they started putting timbers up again. Here's another example where you can see a break in the timbers. So I don't know exactly what all these construction philosophies are, but I can tell you there's a lot of fallen rock around all throughout these tunnels, and you can see some big ones that fell down and even knocked the timbers crooked. It's really amazing to me how much of the rock has fallen, and you notice that when it's not cleaned up. You know, I guess we take it for granted that there's crews out cleaning up our highways and keeping, you know, when you're going through a canyon, you don't really appreciate how much rock they haul out of there every year. When you go on an abandoned railroad, you really notice it accumulates quite a bit. Here's a weird little thing we found right on the backside of one of these tunnels. If you know what this is, please put it in the comments. I'd love to know what this is. It's got a wood frame. It looks really old. Pretty much still whole, but in somewhat decayed condition. I have no idea what this would be for. like torquing screws here that go through to make sure that this timber doesn't bow out. On every bridge, on both sides, on every tunnel opening. Just when you think you've seen everything, there's more complexities. They just keep compounding as you walk down the railway. This is a retaining wall. It looks like it was built by hand using rocks that they just grabbed from laying around and used some sort of mortar and then filled it in with sand. But you can only imagine the amount of man hours it took to build this single little area here. Here's some classic field engineering going on. They needed to fill the gap there, I guess, to maintain support on the rock, but pretty sure that wasn't in the original drawings. This is the one that I believe was the really hard rock. And it took them 2 years to build this one. 3 feet a day. We've been walking for, I don't know, 8-10 minutes. This is quite something. But we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? That's your joke. I just stole your joke. Here's another thing. We're not sure what it is.
It's the torture chamber.
It is. It's all somebody wrote torture chamber on it. Oh, it's open on the back. Some pretty heavy doors, sealed doors. But I don't know. If you know what this is, put it in the comments. Okay, finally we got on the other side of Tunnel 14 here, which was super long. We come around this bend and you can see now we're almost to the trestle. So if you hung in here all this time, 42 minutes in to see this, we're almost there. Now on the right there is the original tunnel that collapsed, that went off sideways in the mountain from the beginning of the video. And you can see how the tracks veer off kind of suddenly to the left. This is where they decided they didn't want to try and redig that tunnel. They went around the mountain, and that's why they had to build the trestle, the world's largest and longest all wooden trestle. So let's go ahead and fast forward up there so you can finally see the trestle. And there actually is one more tunnel as you come around that bend, and then when you go through that tunnel, then you get this not so impressive angle of the trestle, but as you come out, you can definitely see how long and amazing it was to build this. But as you get to a different vantage point, it's when you really start to get your mind blown. So let's walk across it together here, and then we'll spin around and show you some drone footage so you can really grab the total size and scope of this massive undertaking. Now what's so amazing about this is that it took them less than 1 year from the time that other tunnel collapsed until they had this trestle completed. Obviously there was a major financial incentive to complete the tunnel because they needed to get the railway running again, but to conceptualize, engineer, acquire the materials, build this thing, get the railway back rolling and actually going across this incredible feat of engineering, that's something. So it's a real honor to be able to see it, that it's still here, which is amazing. They haven't torn it down or otherwise made it impossible to come visit it. So in the background, you can see the tunnel that went sideways down the hill in the landslide, and you can also see the flat level area where the old track used to be that goes around and follows the mountain there. And there's a rail car that's been sitting there for a long time. If you look at older videos of hikers out here, it was before the mural was on it. So as you look through other people's hikes out to this over the years, you can see how things are slowly changing. But you can also see down here midway across, there's a catwalk that runs underneath, and we're going to go down there and have lunch here in a second. But there's also the fire suppression pipe that runs along there. I think that's what that catwalk was for. And we follow the pipe and it goes up the mountain to an old tanker car that's sitting up on the top of the mountain. So it was a gravity fed fire suppression system. Pretty primitive by today's standards, but it's kind of cool to see the ingenuity that went into using what they had at the time to solve problems. I just wanted to do a little quick flyover on this old car. I don't know what year this car was built, but it looks like it's all mechanically operated. So you twist this big handle and, you know, just release the coal or whatever it is you were hauling from underneath the car. And can we talk about this mural on the side of this car? I mean, this is incredible. Really, really good work here. It's too bad someone tagged over it, but this is something to see. And up ahead in the distance there, you can see another partially collapsed tunnel, and Maggie there walking as part of the scale. She's like, okay, you're gonna fly your drone. I'm just gonna walk up here. But notice more rocks too, laying in the middle of the tracks. Just glad nothing fell down while we were there, but you think about that, I'm like, wow, I'd love to see some rocks falling down, but not while I'm standing there. You can kind of see how the original track came straight out where this car is parked, and then the new one swung in from the side there. And then you can see this original track here leading over to the collapsed tunnel. So here's that pipe that goes down for the fire suppression that used to lead up to that tank, and it's still there. It's just kind of tagged up a little bit, but just laying there sort of haphazardly affixed to that railroad tie. Doesn't look like they put too much heavy engineering into it. They just wanted to run water under the bridge. And I guess, being that it was gravity fed, there was a way to hook a hose to it so you could run out onto this catwalk, somehow tap a hose into that pipe and get enough pressure to extinguish the fire. I have no idea how that would work, but maybe there's enough pressure, being that that tank is several feet up on that mountain. I imagine there was some pretty good water pressure. These timbers are amazingly well preserved underneath here. And a lot of these initial ones, before you get out towards the center where they coupled several different timbers together, these initial ones are solid single pieces of timber. And they're really long, considering that they have to be buried pretty deep down into the rocks. So they must have gone to the redwood forest and found some long timbers. I don't know. These are, some of them look like they're 40, 50 feet long. As we walked out here, kind of wanted to look back and see how sort of haphazardly they ran this fire suppression pipe. But they had the ability to run down onto this thing and tap into the water to extinguish the fire. So I'd say we're pretty paranoid about fire, considering that they had had several. So thankfully Maggie is really good in the kitchen, made some delicious sandwiches, but we needed a break from the direct sun. There's not a lot of shade other than when you're in the tunnels. So being that we were several hours into this hike, this was a glorious, nice place to sit in the shade with a light breeze, incredible view. Of course, I was nerding out on every aspect of this trestle and how they constructed it. So maybe one of the coolest lunches I've had in recent memory. Our view is pretty amazing here. It's kind of cool that the whole system of this railway was built in fives. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over on the other side. We notice a series of fives throughout the tunnels too. I don't know if there's some engineering reason for that or superstition or what, but you can see 5 posts supporting that main beam that runs directly under the tracks. And then these side posts that stick out that support this walkway, and that's what everyone's walking on. Just that rotten old wood sticking out there. And I'm guessing that sometime in the future they're going to have to shut this trail down because people are going to start getting hurt. You can see how rotten these timbers are. This whole trestle moves. A mountain biker went over and the whole thing was moving. But the fit and finish is amazing. This timber is cut around this beam. And this giant timber comes all the way down. And it's also cut around this beam, and all of these are angled very specifically. It is an engineering marvel. Someone put this 65 up here in wire. I'd love to know what that is. If you know what that is, please leave it in the comments. Definitely looks original to the construction. So that's my little tour of this railway. I'm going to do a quick walk back across the bridge here so that you can kind of get the feel of what it was like walking across. Look at these. They have cords on here. I'm just saying, look at this. For all you that are thinking about riding your bike across this, I would really strongly consider maybe not. Although someone just rode it over a few minutes ago. It's really a, you know, don't trust that these things are being maintained in such a way that it won't have a sudden catastrophic failure. Oh, these timbers are so old. They're getting so rotten. I think in 10 years they're gonna have to seal this off so people don't hurt themselves. I'm sitting here and editing now, watching this creaky bridge, and I'm going, maybe I'm the jackass, but you know, we survived. And then also wanted to mention that by the time we got back to the guy with the motorcycle, we could see that he did come back by himself and tried to pull that motorcycle up the mountain, and it only got worse. It went further down the mountain and he was gone. So we can only assume that he just was defeated, was unable to do it. We did look around to make sure that he wasn't there, stranded somewhere. We didn't see him anywhere, so that was kind of a sad story. It looked like a brand new motorcycle. And for Maggie and I, unfortunately, this will always be an unresolved mystery in our minds when we think back on this very fun hike. Unless, of course, Mr. Motorcycle Man, you're watching. If you are, please comment below and let us know what happened. Did you get your motorcycle out? We would love to know, and I'm sure anyone else watching this video would love to read the comments that you got it out and everything was okay. In any case, I want to thank you, my friends, for joining me on this very long video. It was really fun to make, and we will see you on the next one.